In 1987, Terence Trent D'arby was perhaps the hottest artist in music. Fresh off his debut solo album, The Hard Line According to Terence Trent D'arby, he was hailed as the next Michael Jackson or the next Prince. He and Prince actually became friends and talked on the phone often. Legendary artists such as Miles Davis and Mick Jagger were fans of his music, and he was mentored by, among others, Bruce Springsteen. At the same time, D'arby told the media that he was a genius. Unfortunately for him, as high as he was after his debut was how low he was after his second release, Neither Fish Nor Flesh. Seemingly overnight, critics hated him and fans abandoned him. After being knocked off the mountaintop, he seemed to disappear. What happened to Terence? And what's up with his name change? What's he been doing since Fish Nor Flesh? Check out this video to find out. Terence Trent D'arby was born as Terence Trent Howard in Harlem, New York on March 15, 1962. His mother, Frances, was the daughter of a pastor. Terence's biological father was never in his life. His stepfather, Benjamin D'arby, was initially an evangelist, then later became a pastor. D'arby spent the first 2 years of his life in Harlem before moving to East Orange, New Jersey. It was around that same time that Terence recalled the first thing in his life that he consciously remembered, and that was hearing a Beatles song. At the age of 6, Terence's family moved to Florida, then back to New Jersey, then Chicago for 3 years, then back to Florida. While he was growing up, Terence's father didn't allow TV or secular music in the house. As a result, D'arby used to sneak out to listen to pop and country music. Additionally, he had a small transistor radio in his room. Meanwhile, starting at age 6, Terence began singing in his father's choir. As he reached puberty, he dropped out of the church choir and joined the school chorus. His singing in school would become the key to his popularity. He also says that he became the most popular guy in school because he sang. D'arby also wrote for his school paper and served as president of his civics class. Terence was a scrawny boy, so away from singing in classes, he was often picked on and bullied. In 1976, when Terence was 14, he saw Sugar Ray Leonard, as well as brothers Leon and Michael Spinks, win Olympic gold medals in boxing. The trio of boxers inspired him, and he began to take boxing seriously. He stopped singing and poured his efforts into making himself a boxer. He found a boxing coach and began training in Orlando, Florida. All his hard work paid off, as later he became the local Golden Gloves champion. This drew the attention of the United States Army, specifically their boxing coaches. As a result, after graduating high school at 17, D'arby wanted to join the Army so that he could box. However, his father refused to sign a permission slip for Terence to join. Instead, his father encouraged him to enroll at the University of Central Florida on scholarship. However, once he got to college, he began to lose interest quickly in the scholastic portion of it. He also had another reason he didn't like college. He couldn't get any girls. At 17, his hormones were bouncing off the walls, and it was driving him crazy. He was roommates with his cousin, and they lived off campus. The cousin was the starting tight end on the football team. His football teammates treated Terence's place like a frat house, often spending the night there. Additionally, there were always cheerleaders there too. While Terence was hopeful that he could get lucky with at least one of the girls, unfortunately, all he got to do was cook for everyone else in the house. Furthermore, the players would kick Terence out of his room so that they could use it to get to know the cheerleaders a little better. To make matters worse, sometimes D'arby would be in class and he'd be sitting behind a girl who had just come out of his room earlier that morning, and she hadn't been with him. Eventually, he dropped out of school after a year. Now that he was 18, he no longer needed his parents' permission to join the military. Since he wanted to continue boxing, he joined the Army. At the time, though he wasn't aware of it, his joining the Army was destiny, as it would take him somewhere in the world that he never would have gone otherwise. Germany, which is where he would find his calling. Shortly after finishing basic training, according to D'arby, something surreal happened to him. In a dream, he was in New York City, where he encountered a man who emerged from a haze. The man was smiling, and as he approached D'arby, the man was revealed to be John Lennon, member of the famous group The Beatles. Lennon stuck his hand out for Terence to shake it, but when Terence tried to do so, Lennon disappeared into Terence's body. After waking up from the dream, D'arby found out that Lennon had lost his life the night before. Terence's interpretation of the dream and Lennon's passing was that Lennon had entered into his body. From that point forward, D'arby says that he could feel himself pushed into action by Lennon's spirit. Immediately after his epiphany, Terence was stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, then was transferred to a post near Hamburg, Germany. After arriving there, he gave up on boxing. His reasoning was simple. Quote, "What got to me was getting up at 5 o'clock every morning and running. I just thought, what sane person gets up this early? So I stopped. I said, this is not for people who have brains and options." Unquote. We're going to take a time out from our story to ask you to like, subscribe, share, comment, hit that notification bell, and repeat when it comes to our videos. Now, back to our story. At that point, D'arby went back to singing. Being in Germany allowed him to find his niche. As Terence later said, quote, "All my life, I've been a square peg trying to be forced into a round hole. Once I stumbled into this band, my mission in life woke up again." Unquote. The band he was referring to was called The Touch, and they were a local funk band. One of Terence's contributions to the band was his ability to sound like Michael Jackson. He and the group became popular and performed regularly in clubs. While on the music side, that was great. On the military side, it was bad for D'arby because he often left posts without permission. Additionally, many times, his superiors had no idea where he was. As Terence's popularity as a singer rose, his desire to be in the army waned. He began to see being a soldier as being brainwashed. As he later said, quote, "I was tired of being told by a person with a 4th grade education what to do all the time. I think I broke the record for reprimands. I was just reckless and I didn't care." Unquote. Eventually, the army had enough, and at age 21, he was kicked out of the military. He came back to the States to out-process from the military, then rushed back to Germany to continue performing with his band. At some point between graduating high school and releasing his debut album, D'arby underwent his first name change. In his surname, he placed an apostrophe after the letter D. There was no meaning to it. He simply did it for aesthetic purposes. In 1984, the group released the album Love on Time. 2 years later, Terence had moved to London, where he briefly performed with a group called the Bojangles. Eventually, he signed a solo deal with CBS Records. His debut album, introducing the hardline according to Terence Trent D'arby, was released in July of 1987. The album was a smash, going #1 on the R&B charts and #4 on the pop charts. It went double platinum in America, while going 5 times platinum in the UK. The single Wishing Well went #1 on both R&B and pop. Additionally, the singles Sign Your Name, Dance Little Sister, and If You Let Me Stay all hit the top 20. He was immediately hailed as the next big thing in music. On top of that, he was also being praised by the likes of Miles Davis and Mick Jagger. D'arby also says that Princess Diana and Jack Nicholson were examples of the celebrities, quote, "whose patronage I was humbled to receive," unquote. D'arby leaned into all that hype. He told the media that his album was the most important release since the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. If that wasn't enough, he also declared himself to be a genius. Later, he would admit that he was merely exaggerating in order to draw people's attention to him, like his hero Muhammad Ali used to do. However, what initially began as Terence playing to the crowd began to get out of hand. Members of the press were getting tired of his act quickly. Some of them were looking forward to him being humbled. Their chance to see that occur came sooner than anyone ever expected it to. For Terence's follow-up album, it would have been safe to assume that after the success of his debut, his new release would be very similar, in the same vein, sound very similar. Instead, it appeared that he went out of his way to make an album that was nothing like his Hardline album. In October of 1989, he released the highly anticipated Neither Fish Nor Flesh, a soundtrack of love, faith, hope, and destruction. One listen to the album in its entirety, and many of his fans were instantly disappointed. They weren't the only ones. The album was a major flop, both commercially as well as critically. In America, the album lagged at number 61 on the pop charts and number 75 on the R&B charts. Two of the singles released didn't chart at all. However, in the UK, the release went gold. Some speculated that D'arby was too ambitious with the album. After all, he'd only released one album prior to this one, and his fans expected more of what he'd previously given them. The differences in his two albums was too stark and too extreme for most people. Some people were angry with Terence because he refused to conform to being the next soul guy. He didn't want to just be classified as a black artist. He felt that people were very specific about what they expected from black artists, and as a result, it would limit his imagination and the things that he was able to do with his music. Meanwhile, Terence's enemies, they were elated at his rapid fall from grace. A few years later, in 1993, Terence would reflect that the album's failure was, quote, paying the price for wanting to climb very high. I'm paying for everything I said, and I try not to feel any bitterness. I do not regret how the press treated me. That was the game, and I have to accept losing, unquote. Still later, he stated that the album's failure was what ultimately killed the persona of Terence Trent D'arby. He went on to say that the album's failure forced him to leave London and move to Los Angeles. While he lived in a mansion there, he was a recluse of sorts. D'arby's third album, Symphony or Damn, was released in May of 1993. While the album was well received by critics, in America it only made it to number 119 on the pop charts, while failing to chart at all on the R&B charts. Conversely, in the UK, the album went gold. Additionally, four of the singles, Do You Love Me Like You Say, Delicate, She Kissed Me, and Let Her Down Easy, all went top 20. These would be the final singles in D'arby's career that would chart. The album Vibrator was released in April of 1995. As with D'arby's previous release, this album flopped in the States as well. This time, Terence's fans in the UK weren't feeling his album. Even though it hit number 11, it failed to go gold. This would be the final album that he'd record for the Sony label. Prior to his contract ending with Sony, D'arby had been fighting with the label for approximately 2 years to get out of his contract. One of his bones of contention was that he says the label told him that even his own name, if he made it famous, it didn't belong to him. The property or asset that he created belonged to the label. It would be another 6 years before Terence would release another album. In the meantime, trying his hand at acting, Terence appeared in Shake, Rattle, and Roll, an American love story. In the miniseries, he portrayed one of his heroes, singer Jackie Wilson. That same year, on June 12, 1999, D'arby was a guest vocalist for the group INXS at the inauguration of the Olympic Stadium in Sydney, Australia. This event was of note because it would be the last public appearance of the man that the world knew as Terence Trent D'arby. Quote, Terence Trent D'arby was dead. He watched his suffering as he died a noble death. After intense pain, I meditated for a new spirit, a new will, and a new identity. Unquote. That's a quote from the former Terence Trent D'arby as he introduced himself to the world as Sananda Maitreya in October of 2001. He went on to explain that his name change was the result of a series of dreams that he had years earlier. Sananda meant one who walks with light, and Maitreya meant among the sons of God. As far as his fall from stardom was concerned, Maitreya had a theory. He believed that the powers that be in the music industry colluded to force him out of music because he was considered a threat to Michael Jackson as well as other pop stars from that time. Why? Because, according to him, behind his back, A-list stars were complaining about the attention that he was getting, and some of them were sending their managers to ask what was up with that. Maitreya summed up his comments by concluding, quote, "The establishment had to do something about it because it couldn't have all the gods angry," unquote. By this time, D'arby had moved to Munich, Germany, as well as started his own independent record label, Treehouse. A week after his name change announcement, he released the album Wild Card. The album was one of a kind as it had both D'arby's old name as well as his new name, Sananda Maitreya, on the cover. Over the next 2 decades, fans of D'arby had lots of new music to enjoy as he continued to release albums on his own label. What's not certain is if most people were even aware he was releasing these albums. Either way, he was very prolific, as each LP held at least 20 songs. For example, 2005's Angels and Vampires Volume 1 held 20 tracks. 2015's The Rise of the Zuckerbrand Time Lords was a double album and had a grand total of 27 tracks. Not to be outdone, 2017's Prometheus and Pandora contained 3 volumes and consisted of a staggering 53 songs. His most recent release, 2024's The Pegasus Project, Pegasus and the Swan, contains 42 tracks. Nearly 40 years after releasing his debut solo album, D'arby continues to record new music and also tour overseas, but he's never returned to the heights he attained at the beginning of his career. However, what's more important than his status in the public eye, Terence seems to be a man at peace with where he is in his life. He currently lives in Milan, Italy, is married to Francesca Francone, and the couple have 2 sons together. Perhaps Terence is living the advice that he got from the legendary Al Green. Once, D'arby asked Green why he was always happy. Green told him he was that way because every morning he woke up, he chose to be happy. Wise words to live by. What's your favorite Terence Trent D'arby song? Or what's your favorite Sananda Maitreya song? Let us know in the comments. Thank you all for checking out our video. We appreciate you spending time with us, but please know we have other videos out there and they need some love too. Take some time to check those out and see what they got going on. Thanks again and see you soon.